But for other hoteliers for whom this sounds very enticing at the moment, they're not wholly reliant on Expedia. I would say buyer beware. And I'd also consider the fact that, as Charlie says, now's not a bad time to start promoting your own direct offering, which you're not paying commission on. You're not allowing someone else to compete with you in meta channels, which is what you're doing if you're giving Expedia all of these great rates, which is costing you even more money on your bidding if you run meta. You have a chance to actually run, and you can run a good direct demand marketing program for less than the cost of the commission that you'd be giving away to Expedia quite successfully. So I'd say be careful.
But that last part, if you've got marketing people around, right?
If you've got marketing people around, but it's not, I mean, there's plenty of people out there who will, including some of the people on this call, who will help you run a marketing program for less than the cost that you will pay in commission to drive direct demand. So you can outsource that. It's not as expensive or as complicated as it sounds. I'm not saying don't use OTAs, because of course right now everyone wants every booking, and OTAs are they're bookings on demand. And as I say, there's some good stuff in there. I mean, the longer payment terms on hotel direct rates or hotel collect rates are, that's not a bad thing, but it's a great time to be looking to build your direct proposition, and don't put all your eggs in this basket. I would not advise that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a perfectly good point too, is not putting all your eggs in one basket, right? Which we would never advocate regardless of channel, unless you're, some magical unicorn hotel that actually can fill all your rooms and get all your demand direct. I'm sure everybody watching this would like to know your secrets and how you're doing that. But I think right now it's really important for hotels to look at all of these channels, their direct, OTA, whatever, just as a customer acquisition tool, because that's what everybody needs right now. That's what they're fighting over. And I don't remember the exact quote, so I'm going to completely butcher this, but Dara Khosrowshahi, when he was still with Expedia, he I think on an earnings call or whatever the context was, basically said that exact same thing. Use the platform, maximize it intelligently, get that guest into your hotel, and then convert them into a direct booker. And then if they book you a second time in an OTA, then you need to step up your game at the hotel level and figure out why you're not able to turn these people into direct bookings. But hotels really just need to look at all of these channels as different kind of customer acquisition tools, rather than who they're competing against for these guests.
Okay, but that's one of my issues with the PR spin and the marketing kind of suggestibility by Expedia here, as is so often the way. They know full well they can hit hotels with a big headline. They can capture a load of interest. They get hotels to change things like, okay, giving you the lowest rate and all that other stuff, wholesale rates and everything else. And then they're relying on the fact that hoteliers get busy with their day job and they don't get time to go back and really analyze how it's going. So another example, and in fact, I was reading a Mirai blog about this last week, is when Expedia say pay a higher commission rate and get featured and therefore get more bookings. If you actually go through the maths of what proportion of what massive jump and leap in extra bookings do we need to justify the increase in commission rate, intuitively it tricks the human brain. Because you kind of intuitively think, okay, if I'm going to pay 20% higher commission, I'd like 20% more bookings. But in fact, to be able to pay the same commission you were paying before and to get a net profit out of it, you need 3x the number of bookings. And Expedia know this. They have run all the numbers. And I think this is another example of slightly disingenuous marketing, where they're putting a spin, and Andrew pointed out a couple of ways on it. And what I think it really does is it traps hotels. Because it's not that, okay, you get into the system and your laziness means you don't get out. For me, it traps hotels, because once you're in this system, at this extraordinary moment when $1 spent on your own marketing, for example, on Google, will drive way better return than you'll ever see before or later. Once you get into this OTA hook again, like hotels did post 2008, you're trapped. This is a vicious cycle. And that's why I'm quite adamant that hotels have to be very wary, and it's very few hotels that I would recommend take on the program.
Yeah, I mean, you have to ask, who is this a recovery plan for? Expedia have said themselves that they had revenues down or bookings down 85%, I think it was last month. and some of their financial challenges have been well publicized in their earnings calls. And they've just had new private equity money. Now, Charlie's right. I mean, Expedia has got more analysts than any company I've ever worked for. I mean, seriously, you go out and say, the sky looks nice today, it's nice and blue, and a bunch of analysts will go away and tell you, actually, it's not blue, it's a certain shade of grey. They analyze everything. So they know the numbers. And ultimately, what this is really, I think, is an attempt for them. They've got new private equity money to restart their own business, to get some PR coverage, to drive some momentum in the marketplace when some of the other schemes which are out there have had a bit of bad publicity. And, fair enough. They're good at PR. They've got good PR people. They know their numbers. But from a hotelier's point of view, just look at it carefully and see whether it makes sense for you. Don't just fall into that trap of, oh, wow, these really great philanthropic guys at Expedia are giving away a load of free money for me, because they're not. They're really not.
So aren't what all of us are saying really kind of is that hotels, they need to be smart with what they're doing. They need to pay attention. They need to really look at the details. And then kind of to Charlie, to your point, as far as getting sucked in, is really looking at also how they're segmenting what they're doing now and what strategies they're going to use right now at this point in time with recovery, and what their strategy is going to be and how they're going to pivot to a different strategy as they start to build that base back, to make sure that they don't get stuck in what they're doing now and that they're actively evaluating it, whether it's working and how that will continue to work or not work as they do, as you said, emphasize their direct bookings, build some of that base as well, and how they can make that shift.
Yeah, I definitely agree about your points of you need to optimize every channel. The OTAs are a channel, it's one to be optimized. And the best way to think about it is go and look at what kind of guests do I get from my Expedia channel? What have I got in the past? Where do they come from? How long do they stay? Are they the kind of guests that I'm targeting right now? And then equally look at your direct channel and ask the same question. I suspect what most hotels will find is that the domestic travel that we're all expecting right now is actually better served direct, if you've got a good direct strategy, than it is through OTAs, who often are great with fly-in travel. So I'm with you. You've got to optimize every channel you've got, including Expedia. However, one of the problems that's kind of deep within the small print of this is that Expedia is handcuffing you as a hotelier, right, around the rates and what rates you can have. Right at the moment when every single guest is going to come to a hotel website because they're desperate to find out what's the deal with hygiene in my hotel, how many people are going to be in the lobby or whatever. At a moment like never before, when people are all going to be on the hotel website, you need to be thinking about optimizing that channel first and giving yourself the best rates and best offers. So that's why I say buyer beware, to use Andrew's phrase.
Yeah. One thing I would put a big flashing warning sign on with this whole offer, or just the OTAs and Parity in general, is, and this is a completely separate conversation, but what's going to happen to the bed bank and wholesale market with everything going on, because as we've discovered is part of this particular offer anyway, and I will give you guys this point here, is that when they say your lowest retail rate, a lot of times hotels are having to agree that they will let them automatically match rates, which, as we all know, as a revenue manager, is a constant struggle, is the parity question. So hotels do need to be very, very careful if they do have those agreements in place, if they have historically struggled with parity, just what that's going to look like now, and what that looks like when you do give more access to wholesale rates, or if you do agree to automatic rate matching, just what your headache was before and what it could be now if you're actually authorizing something like that. So parity is just going to become even more important and a bigger part of your job, and something to monitor if you do choose to engage in things like this. So